The Lebanese army takes control of Beirut and Tripoli to end fierce fighting between Hezbollah-led opposition fighters and supporters of the government. So long trusted by all factions, is the army now playing politics and taking sides? This is Inside Story. Hello, I'm Imran Garda. The Lebanese army has been accused of defying the country's government and bowing to demands by Hezbollah. Although many streets were turned over to the army, it's been playing a passive role in recent clashes. The army by policy reflects the sectarian divisions of the country, and while there have been reform efforts to increase its sense of unity, constitutionally it is in no position to take on an internal security mission unless it receives a political consensus. The army has been widely seen as a neutral force, unwilling to take sides, but its latest proposed solution, promising to handle Hezbollah's telephone network without harming the group's security, and its decision to keep the chief of airport security in his post, has raised doubts about its impartiality. Well, joining us to discuss this issue are our guests in Beirut, Ahmed Musalli, Professor of Political Science at the American University of Beirut. Also in Beirut, Hisham Jaber, retired Army General and Head of Middle East Center for Studies and Public Relations. And in Washington, D.C., Hussein Abdul Hussein, a Lebanese journalist. Welcome, gentlemen. I want to start off with Ahmed Musalli. Do you think that the army is taking sides in this conflict?
No, the army is not taking side, but it is considering the very tense situation inside Lebanon. And don't forget that even the government represents a particular perspective about the Lebanese problem, its relation to the outside world. So what we are seeing, that different forces, one taking on the form of a government and a majority, and the other one, the opposition, are having very severe conflict over the internal politics and external politics, and therefore the army cannot stand, as it has been, or some people trying to push the army to stand against Hezbollah. I mean, the government's decrees were not in favor of the army anyway. I mean, they were, in a way or another, giving the army the responsibility of the beginning of dismantling Hezbollah through starting with the telecommunications system of the resistance. And the army knows if it's going to go after Hezbollah, it means it will go into some kind of disintegration, a split, and probably civil war. And the position that the army could take, and I think the commander of the army was very wise, is just to take over after things have been cleared up. Otherwise things could go out and become, actually, we go through another civil war, which I don't think anyone wants.
Hisham Jaber, do you believe that the army is neither capable nor willing to confront the opposition?
First of all, we have to be clear and to let everybody know that the mission and the duty of the Lebanese army has never been, and it's not supposed to be, like the defender of any government in Lebanon. The army, the mission of the army is to defend the nation and to defend the national institutions, the pillars of the state. I said the state, not the government. And the Lebanese army is not made to support any faction in Lebanon against another faction. Otherwise, the army will be split. We have an experience in the last 5 decades. In 1958, when General Shihab refused to take an army to in the side of the president at that time, Camille Chamoun, and the army did protect the national institutions. General Shihab became the president of Lebanon at that time and had the confidence of all Lebanese factions. 2 times the army tried to take side in with this faction and against another faction. The army was split. General Suleiman is aware of this, and he knows the army is not supposed to fight any Lebanese faction, whether Hezbollah or other faction, against another one. The army has a restricted capability. The army is doing its job to protect the nation, to protect the Lebanese citizens, to protect the national institutions. The army has a very bad experience in Nahr al-Balid, and which was the first test of the army in which the army was succeeded. I think the army doesn't have to gamble again and to go and to receive orders from some ministers and the government which doesn't enjoy of legitimacy or legality, or at least of the confidence of the Lebanese people, at least the half of the Lebanese people.
All right, let's bring in Hussein Hussein in Washington, D.C. Sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Jabir. This reversal, Mr. Hussein, of the government's decision on Hezbollah regarding its communications network, what do you make of that?
Well, I think this wouldn't happen in a proper democracy. It's not something normal that a government, after taking a decision, then handing over the decision to the army, because this would make of Lebanon a military state. I think the army can have a margin of acting on its own when we're talking about the protection of civilians. The stories that we heard about the army going up to the offices of the Mustaqbal newspaper and negotiating with them for them to come down, I think this is not a role that an army can do. The army should protect citizens despite everything else in domestic politics of Lebanon.
Ahmed Musalli, did Hezbollah gain greater credibility as a fighting force in the eyes of all Lebanese during the war with Israel in the summer of 2006, a war in which the army didn't get involved?
Yes, I mean, Hezbollah did get more power, or at least the image. Actually, it's a very formidable fighting force, and it is not something to sniff at. The army in Lebanon, I'm just to connect with what Mr. Abdel Hussein said, could not do otherwise. I mean, we don't want Hezbollah or other forces in the opposition to go up to certain military centers and take over these places. Then that would lead to internal sectarian strife. And that what happened is that some people were disarmed without fighting, and the centers were delivered to the army. In Lebanon, the army does function as a national security force rather than fighting Israel and so on, because the army has been prevented by external powers to play a defensive role of the country, given the fact that a lot of Western power, including the U.S., wants Israel to be the dominant force. And while the army did fight in Nahr al-Barid camp, it fought with very unsophisticated military, and the U.S. put a condition for its support to change its ideology that Israel is the enemy. And therefore, throughout the recent history of Lebanon, the Lebanese army has played an internal pacifying role rather than a fighting role, with the very prominent exception in the recent time of Fatah al-Islam group. And therefore, I think Hezbollah is a major force. Hezbollah is defending the country. The army recognizes that publicly, and therefore the army could not go against Hezbollah, or actually could not go against any Lebanese group, but at least the whole situation will be given to the army. The army now is in control of Beirut. It's not Hezbollah, it's not the opposition, it is not anyone else.
Hisham Jabir, some have said that the Hezbollah-led opposition have been waiting for any opportunity, any trigger as an excuse to flex its muscle. What do you make of that?
Say again, please. I didn't understand the question.
Mr. Jabir, some have said that Hezbollah and the Hezbollah-led opposition have been waiting for any trigger, any excuse to flex its muscle and show its military strength. What do you make of that accusation?
No, at all. I don't believe in this. And no, it's the contrary of this. I think the government and the supporter of the government tried to bring Hezbollah into the streets and all the opposition to fight in the streets in order to show the whole world that Hezbollah is not a fighter to Israel, but it's involved in the Lebanese domestic fighting. In this point, I think the government did succeed, because all decisions of the government which provoked and were the reason of those conflicts, in my opinion, were unwise at all and came at the very wrong time. The timing is not convenient at all. Hezbollah, I think the government did succeed bringing the opposition into the street of Beirut. But to answer your guest from Washington, I think the army did his duty and to protect the supporter of the government and ensure their security in Ras al-Naba and other area where they're fighting in Beirut. And when they pretend that they don't have any gunmen, who was fighting whom? The battle was in the 3 days in Beirut between the two factions, the opposition on one side and the supporters of the government.
All right, sorry to interrupt you. I want to bring in Hussein Abdul Hussein. Let's bring in Hussein Abdul Hussein to respond to this. Firstly, on whether the army actually did a good job or not, but secondly, on this issue of the trigger. According to Mr. Jabir, it was March 14, backed by its Western allies, who actually tried to suck Hezbollah into some sort of confrontation by dismantling the communications network, that this was an open provocation. What do you make of that?
Amran, Mr. Nasrallah in his press conference said that this war is to establish a new phase, a new period in the history of Lebanon. Mr. Nasrallah in his press conference went much beyond these two decisions, and what's going on shows it. I think what the Hezbollah is trying to do is to flex a muscle. It's a show of force to coerce its foes. I don't think this is wise. It's not wise. If you want the Lebanese people to support you in your resistance of Israel, you have to convince them to do so. You can't coerce them to do so. You can't force them to do so. And I think this has been a big mistake, because it drove a wedge between Hezbollah and the rest of Lebanon. And even like Dr. Jabir was saying, if he believes that this was a trap set by the government, then why did Hezbollah fall into this trap? I always thought that Hezbollah has a wise leadership and that it can practice self-restraint without going to the streets of Beirut and fighting other groups, who, by the way, are no match for Hezbollah. And when you hear news saying that Hezbollah is fighting the forces that are loyal to the government, I don't think there's a fight. You can occupy Beirut using sticks even. So I don't think there's a match, and I don't think this war is justified in the first place.
All right, gentlemen, stay with us. It's time for a short break. When we come back, we explore the Arab efforts to solve the crisis in Lebanon. Back in a moment.